the latest with the Epstein files, with the Clintons, many would say finally being speaking more publicly about them.
Yeah.
How does this change the conversation about the information that we know with regard to Jeffrey Epstein?
So I think it's important first to just let everyone know that, neither Bill Clinton nor Hillary Clinton have been accused of a crime. And much of the discussion, that has gone on over the years about the Clintons and Jeffrey Epstein has been about what did they know and when did they know it. And we know that Bill Clinton traveled on Epstein's jet about 16 times. There is a very clear link between Ghislaine Maxwell and the Clinton Global Initiative, as well as one-time Clinton aide Doug Band. So there's a lot out there, that went on over the years where money exchanged hands, gifts were exchanged, not directly with Bill or Hillary Clinton, but there is that relationship there. And then from the files, there's also pictures, right? There's pictures of Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein. So their response, what we know thus far about, what they testified to, won't, put to rest any of those questions, because it comes down to, from the clip you just played, Hillary Clinton saying, don't know Jeffrey Epstein, and Bill Clinton saying, I knew nothing of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, and I did nothing wrong. So, there's going to be still some time that we're going to need to see what what the other questions were. What other details were discussed? Was money discussed? Was a Clinton Global Initiative discussed? I mentioned Doug Band. We reported last year in our Epstein series. He was a Clinton aide who went on to work with Bill and Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton with the Clinton Global Initiative. He was it appears that they got Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell got a watch for him, a very expensive watch. So those are some of the more detailed questions about money, relationships, travel. That's what we're going to need to wait for.
Right. And we know Hillary Clinton talked about Ghislaine Maxwell coming to her daughter Chelsea Clinton's wedding only as a guest of someone else. It's kind of interesting. I think what was also interesting, and I'm curious how you read this, Jason, Hillary Clinton was kind of defiant in her statement and just said, I don't know why you're talking to me. Maybe you should be talking to President Trump. Maybe you should be talking to Melania Trump. As we know, there are pictures of both Donald Trump, Melania Trump with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So there was some...
There's also pictures of... I'm sorry to interrupt you, Carol, but there's also pictures of, I believe they're all, together at some point. Not all four of them, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and, Donald, Melania. But there are similar pictures like that as well.
All right. So it's been an interesting week, right? We had somebody, the head of Davos, stepping down as there was stories about Jeffrey Epstein and Davos and his connections. We have had members of Congress calling for the president to be looked into and those missing files. Just clarify for me too, there's a lot of stuff. Didn't even some photos come out and then get pulled again? Like what?
Yeah, that's happening fairly regularly, by the way.
Why?
Well, it's complicated. You're going to get, depending on who you will speak with, you'll get different answers. So first and foremost, when they released these files, they seem to have known that, there would likely be information that they didn't redact, information, pertaining to victims that was not redacted or not withheld. And there's an email established on the website that says, if there's any information here, or if you're a victim, send us an email, and we'll remove it. So in terms of why it's being removed, the answer, that I've received has always been it's about, there's information related to victims. But it's hard to sort of understand that being the justification for everything that has disappeared and reappeared. Let me give you one example. Banks filed suspicious activity reports on Jeffrey Epstein over the years. And these suspicious activity reports went to an agency within the Treasury Department called the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. So those SARs were available that would show what the suspicious activity was, what the potential or alleged financial crime was. Those were available. They were removed. They have since been reposted, but entirely redacted with the exception of a header, right? That says FinCEN. So you can't really justify saying that meaning, the DOJ, that relates to, a victim, because it was discussing Jeffrey Epstein's accounts. So there's lots of different reasons, but not one that actually really makes sense as it relates to all the different records.
It raises the question, Jason, as somebody who's been deep into FOIA files for decades at this point, is there a pathway to get some of that unredacted? Is there a way for a judge or some sort of body to weigh in and say, hey, government, you have to redact this because it is clearly not related to what the redactions were supposed to relate to?
Yeah. So there, just as far as some of the files that have been removed, the judge who has been, presiding over the case against Maxwell and Epstein, I believe, has already said he will hear arguments or hear information from members of Congress who have had questions about, what's being removed, and that comes on the heels of the FBI interview summaries as it related to the allegations against Donald Trump. Separate from that, there is an ongoing FOIA lawsuit that started way back in 2017 for the same records, for all of the FBI and DOJ's Epstein records, that is still working its way through the courts. It's at the Second Circuit now. There was an appeal. And so that actually may be a path toward getting, additional information, or at the very least, an explanation as to why the material has been redacted and why the material, has just been removed. Because that's what we really don't have at this point, is an understanding of what is redacted and what's the reason behind it. So for example, does it relate to an ongoing, law enforcement investigation? Does it relate to privacy? Does it relate to attorney-client privilege? These are historically the reasons or the justifications that the all government agencies would provide if they were releasing similar documents under the Freedom of Information Act. But we're left guessing at this point.
I want to be careful. I've started playing, as Tim knows, I'll be like, I've been searching the Epstein files. Like, it's kind of crazy. Like, you can come across something and...
Yeah, watch out, Jason.
Even though it feels... I know, I want you to come back here.
What you find, Carol? Let me know.
But even though it feels uncomfortable, you're like, it doesn't mean it's a truth or reality. When it comes to President Trump, does it feel like that there is material missing? And forgive me, Jason, I've only saved about 40 seconds. Does it feel like there are questions to be answered?
Yes. There definitely. It feels like there is material missing. I think that we do know that there is some material missing, and that's what members of Congress are trying to force DOJ to release.